You're watching The World with me, Charles Aniagolu. Ukraine's top commander says Russia has significantly increased the intensity of fighting, despite recently announcing plans for a 3-day ceasefire in May. General Alexander Syrskyi said the Russian assaults were focusing mainly on the eastern town of Pokrovsk and the surrounding areas. He said Moscow was suffering losses and retreats despite constant attempts to break through the lines. North Korea has test-fired supersonic strategic and cruise missiles from its new warship, which analysts believe was built with assistance from Russia. North Korea's state media said the country's leader, Kim Jongun, had watched as the new 5,000-ton destroyer tested its arsenal. It said he called for the country's navy to accelerate its ability to launch nuclear attacks. Correspondents say North Korea's military capabilities are booming. After signing a mutual defense pact last year with Russia, Moscow is believed to have supplied the once isolated military with technological assistance, while Pyongyang sent troops to fight in Russia's war in Ukraine. Well, for more on these developments, let's speak now to the international affairs analyst, Dr. Marek Laskiewicz, who joins me on the line from London. Great to see you, Dr. Laskiewicz. Let's start with Ukraine's top commander saying that Russia has significantly increased the intensity of fighting. One would have thought that they'd be whittling it down, given their recent announcements that they plan to have a 3-day ceasefire in early May.
Well, actually, the two comments are not mutually contradictory. For a start, there will be a 3-day ceasefire, presumably, but that's sometime in the future. And President Putin wants to grab as much territory as he can now, because obviously there is a possibility that negotiations will open up, in which case the more territory he has, the better. So therefore, I anticipate up till the date of the ceasefire, the Russians indeed intensifying their attacks.
And I think you mentioned when we last spoke that there's also the concern in Moscow that every time there is a ceasefire, it's an opportunity for the Ukrainians to regroup.
Yes, there is that. There's another aspect. They are now free of the Kursk war, the incursion, that front, and therefore they've got more troops to focus on Pokrovsk. That's one aspect of it. Another one is any sort of ceasefire gives Ukraine a respite. But there is a third aspect. It is possible the Ukraine and USA are having some sort of rapprochement, because it's now recently stated by the Ukrainians they're ready to sign the minerals deal. And as well known that President Trump likes raw materials, especially rare earths. And therefore, it is possible that together with the recent pleasant discussion, tete-a-tete, that they had in the funeral, at the funeral of the Pope, that as a result, they're growing closer. So basically, Russia's acting now whilst they can.
And do you think that rapprochement that you're talking about between the Ukrainian and the American presidents might actually lead to those security guarantees that Ukraine has been asking for?
No, I don't think it will. But what it does is it, so to speak, takes away some of the negativity that the American president has about Ukraine. And therefore, for Russia, it will no longer be plain sailing to secure the deal that they want. And this is, I think, the point. I don't see America giving security guarantees. But then again, you see, his point was that if there's a deal of any sort with Ukraine, then to that extent, Ukraine is protected from being totally overrun by the Russians. And also, then there will be a channel of communication. Moreover, it implies that Ukraine can pay for the arms it has received from America, and so therefore will be in a position to receive yet more arms. So, on the whole, the point is that Ukraine at present is going forwards as opposed to Russia.
And of course, that Ukrainian top commander, General Alexander Syrskyi, also said that You mentioned that town, Pokrovsk, where the Russians have been attempting to assault the town. He said that Moscow was suffering losses and retreats despite constant attempts to break through the lines. I mean, if that is to be believed, it sounds as though Ukraine is still putting up a fairly feisty resistance.
Yes, quite. The point is that America has not withdrawn anything at present. Ukraine still has stocks of arms from America, and the intelligence gathering service via the satellites is still working. And therefore, from that point of view, it is much harder for the Russians to make any sort of breakthrough. And therefore, as a result, it is difficult for them. Clearly, it would be much easier if America were to walk away from Ukraine, but this has not happened. And I think President Putin, as a result, is thinking that that will not happen, and that therefore he ought to try and make a grab for Pokrovsk now.
Well, let's turn to North Korea, which has become a sort of player in that Ukraine war. Pyongyang has test-fired supersonic, strategic and cruise missiles from its new warship, which Western analysts believe was built with assistance from Russia. So that mutual defense pact that was signed last year bearing fruit.
It is indeed for both sides. I think the Kursk incursion zone would have taken much longer for the Russians to recover without the North Koreans. And vice versa, the North Koreans would have taken a very long time to develop the level of technology they now have. From that point of view, it is a mutual pact of mutual assistance, which is working very well for both sides. The key player in all this is now China, which, as a result of the trade war, were it to join in, that would be also a further great assistance to Russia. But even so, with North Korea alone, Russia has benefited, as has North Korea, and probably they intend to carry on doing so.
And of course, as North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un, watched as that new 5,000-ton destroyer tested its arsenal. I mean, he called on the country's navy to accelerate its ability to launch nuclear attacks. How worrying is that?
Well, actually, it's very worrying because North Korea wants South Korea at the very least and has threatened America. And so all this is not purely, as it were, a military exercise. It is a type of veiled threat, arguably not that much veiled. And therefore, from that point of view, the war is spreading, and we've yet to see whether North Korea actually does something. That's another matter altogether. It must be recalled that there's a difference many people posturing and saying what they're going to do, and those who actually do it. So far, North Korea, it is true, has landed up on Russia's side and has sent troops there. But that's another matter altogether from trying to seize South Korea.
Indeed. And of course, what I suppose this mutual defense pact between Russia and North Korea means is that Pyongyang is less isolated now, and it's getting the kind of technological assistance that it never had the opportunity to have in the past. And I'm assuming that would unsettle sort of Western military analysts.
Yes, it would unsettle USA primarily because North Korea has actually threatened USA. And of course, South Korea and Japan. All these places are now being threatened by North Korea's, if you like, military expansion. Moreover, I suspect there is much more trade than that going on. And so North Korea can no longer be termed a hermit kingdom from that point of view. Indeed, the Russia-Ukrainian war has been of great benefit to North Korea. And as a result, I anticipate this continuing. And of course, who knows where it may end up. It is quite clear that from North Korea's point of view, both South Korea and Japan are prizes within their reach. And of course, China is threatening Taiwan. So the whole of the eastern seaboard of Asia, now on America's side, is actually being threatened substantially. And the latest exercises underline this and just how far North Korea is progressing.
I'm just looking ahead now to that 3-day ceasefire in May that the Russians have said is going to come into effect, I think, on the 8th of May. I mean, do you see any possibility that it might be extended further than just 3 days?
No, not as things stand. It really hinges upon what President Donald Trump is offering Russia. There are two possibilities. He will agree with Russia holding a great deal, if not all the territories conquered, together, of course, with de jure acceptance of Crimea. All of this will be very good news for Russia. The problem for the world being then that Russia may move over to another corridor, because the land bridge between Russia and Crimea is just another word for a corridor, in effect, and Russia has been threatening the Suwalki corridor over to East Prussia. So that would be one aspect. The other one is that Donald Trump does not offer everything, in which case Russia will simply fight on. And the question, therefore, is what America plans to do about it. And this is, therefore, the key question now in front of us. Per se, the ceasefire is A, primarily a PR exercise, B, it is a problem to fight a war.
Well, thank you very much. We lost your sound there, Dr. Laskiewicz, but we got the gist of what you were saying. Dr. Marek Laskiewicz is the international affairs analyst who was speaking to me there on the line from London.